Welcome back to Study Skills for Success in College. This, again, is Chapter 5, Part 2, Learning Styles, Memory, and Test Taking. Today we're going to take a look at aiding your memory through two methods called grouping and mnemonics. All right, let's do this. Now, although the purpose of education is to encourage thinking skills rather than just memorize, memory is still important. The best way to measure what a student has learned is to, of course, test them on what they can remember. So, a good memory makes it easier to succeed. Your memory can be broken down into short-term and long-term memory. Short-term is, of course, memories that you remember in the short term. They aren't around for very long. For example, you can probably remember what you ate for lunch yesterday, but you might not remember what you ate for lunch this time last week. Long-term memory, as the name implies, stores experiences and knowledge for months, years, sometimes even decades. Ideally, what you learn in school will be stored in long-term memory. To make sure you're using long-term memory storage, focus on the material and engage as many senses as you can while learning it. This is a key to this lecture. Focusing on material and engaging as many senses as you can. And it's why effective discussion, study groups, these things can help long-term memory and test performance. I can tell you from experience this is absolutely true. Let's do exercise 5-4 together. Now, before we start, I'd like to ask you to pause this video now and grab something to write with and a piece of paper. Do that now. Okay, I'm going to put a list of 12 food items in the blue section of this slide to your right there. Your task is to memorize as many as you can in 1 minute, then write as many as you can from memory on your paper. Okay, so I'm going to put 12 terms up. I want you to focus on those terms, read them, try to memorize as many as you can in the 1 minute that you have, and then write them down after the 1 minute is up. So when I say go, begin your task. As soon as you do, you'll notice a black circle slowly forming around the words. Okay. 1 minute is up when the black circle is complete. Ready? And go. And time. All right, how'd you do? Well, you're going to find out now, right? Go ahead and write as many of the words as you can remember now. Pause the video and write as many on that piece of paper as you can remember. Okay, were you able to memorize and write them all? Probably not. Don't worry about it. This seemingly random list of foods would be hard for anyone to memorize. For one, the list is a little long. Also, some of these items might be more familiar to you than others. And finally, these foods don't necessarily go together, do they? They were extremely random. They aren't connected by anything in particular. And all these factors would make the items harder to remember, to be sure. At times, we all have to memorize information. The key is to have a system for memorizing things. And it's even more important to make sure you understand what you were meant to learn rather than simply being able to repeat it. Now we're going to return to exercise 5-4. So what I'm going to ask you to do is have another piece of paper ready, maybe flip the one that you used over so that you can't see it, right? Have something to write with. I've taken the same items and placed them in alphabetical order and in groups of 3. Here they are. Alphabetical order: burrito, cherries, diet soda. And notice they're in groups of 3. Now that you know this, take a close look at the group of words once again. I'll give you 60 seconds to memorize as many as you can. Ready? And go. And stop. Now, pause the video and write down as many as you can remember. How'd you do this time? Maybe a little better? This is called clustering or grouping. Let's take a closer look at this memorization technique. There's a reason our phone numbers are written 555-1234, for example. The dash in the middle helps make it easier for us to remember the numbers. This is the reason I can still remember my phone number from when I was about 7 years old and lived in Saratoga, California. Probably also had something to do with the fact that my parents, for safety reasons, made me memorize it. Rather than remembering the numbers all in one chunk, we can more easily remember 2 smaller groups of numbers. In the case of the food list from exercise 5-4, we first group the items in alphabetical order and in clusters of 3. We can also group the items, if we wanted to, by category, like main course and fruits and drinks and spreads. And there's my dog. Again, everyone's different. For me, the alphabetical ordering works better. And that's because I have an affinity for letters and words and language more than I do, say, for culinary arts. For those of you who enjoy cooking, I bet that the food categories would work best for you. Another effective memorization technique is the use of mnemonics, which are words, rhymes, and other devices that aid your memory. We're going to look at 2 or 3 different types of mnemonics. For example, did you ever have to memorize the names of the 8 planets in our solar system in order? If so, maybe you heard this mnemonic or a similar one. My very educated mother just served us nachos. You've probably heard that. This type of mnemonic is known as an acrostic. You take the first letter of every item that you're going to memorize and form a sentence that will help you remember vocabulary or terms or concepts, especially when those items should be remembered in a specific order. Acrostic. Ooh, missed one. There it is, Neptune. Another mnemonic device is an acronym. We've all heard of acronyms. It's like an acrostic. Acronyms are words or abbreviations formed from the first letters of the terms you need to memorize. For example, a classic mnemonic is the word HOMES, homes. And if you lived in Michigan, you would know this more than likely. Most children do, because it's used to memorize the names of the Great Lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior, Holmes. I'm sure you recognize these often used acronyms. Can you think of any others? Rhymes are also helpful mnemonic devices. You may have heard this one as a kid. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Formulas that appeal to your sense of logic can also help your memory. For example, see if you can finish this one. Spring forward. Yep, fall back. That one helps us adjust our clocks accordingly for daylight saving time. You can also make up silly stories to help remember facts. In fact, the sillier the story, the easier it can be to remember. This also works with simple memory tasks. Not long ago, I went to a pizza place with three of my colleagues in town, and we decided that we'd get an extra large with pepperoni and olives and salami and mushrooms. I volunteered to put in the order. To ensure that I asked for the right toppings, I constructed a quick mnemonic in the form of a silly statement. So I got up and I walked over to the counter and I said to the young man standing in front of me, "Puppies often smoke menthols." "I'm sorry," he replied. I explained my senseless statement and then I ordered, "Puppies often smoke menthols, pepperoni, olives, salami, and mushrooms." Goofy, right? Yep, but it worked. Well, I hope these concepts and tips have been helpful. This has been a very short lecture. We've got one more in this chapter 5. It will also be fairly short, but let's take a look at what we've learned in this one, okay?